Hello everyone, welcome to the sixth and final week of my calendar painting kit tutorial. This week we're gonna do the last painting, which is this beach painting. Before we start, don't forget to prepare your glass of water, brushes, mixing palette, a paper towel or a towel to clean your brush, and your paints. So without much talking, let's start. Yeah, so this week's painting is this beach painting. This week I have another copy of my calendar that I'm going to use as a reference picture for this week's painting. So before we start, now we're starting. We always start with just wetting the whole page. Important thing about this is originally when I paint this picture I use a masking fluid to cover the stones and the waves, but this time I'm just gonna improvise and not use masking fluid and just use gouache to cover the waves later on. So that being said, the first thing we're gonna do is, as usual, just use a large flat brush, which make it easier, and cover the ocean part. It's best to just not put water on the stones, since it will be easier to put color later on. So I'm just gonna roughly put water around the stones. And cover the whole thing. Except the stones, obviously. So after this is done, we're just gonna go ahead and use wet on wet technique on this. So we're just gonna mix a light blue color, with wet on wet technique, just cover some parts. I like making oceans and water like this because I can just freely use wet on wet technique and let the colors mix, which is always very fun to make. With this beach painting, the colors, we're just gonna leave this part blank along the waves because the color there is like a mix of blue and cream sand color, and then make it like a greenish color. Makes a smooth transition. Just let the darker blue mix in. Just express yourself and let the colors just free flow. The original painting took a long time to make since I was really into it and wanted to make every little details right, but I think this one will be shorter. So we'll take indigo and mix it again. Just paint outside the stones. The part is darker for the reflection of the stones. Obviously I cannot make it exactly the same as the first one. So now I'm just gonna quickly mix greenish color just take cerulean blue and mix it with a little bit of white and yellow. It's like a sea coral color. Now we're just gonna go ahead and mix it with the sand, since this is the first wash layer, and we're gonna add more details later on. We're just gonna mix yellow, bit of orange and red, mix it with white, make a nice sand color. So we're just gonna mix the sand and the waves, make it a smooth transition color, and I mix more green. So now it is just like, I'm just gonna add more dark colors and a bit of gray, darker indigo color. Look at that effects. First effect of the wet on wet. With a damp brush, clean damp brush, you're just gonna mix it lightly. I'm gonna take a smaller brush and mix dark gray to make details for the shadow and the reflection of the stones. this is the first layer, and we're just gonna let this dry before we move on to the second one. After this is dry, let's go ahead and grab our smaller brush, and it's important to make the tiny details now, the way the waves moves and the black corals. So yeah, I'm just gonna grab a dark indigo, mix it with a bit of Payne's gray to make it darker. And we're gonna just make lines over here. It's a reflection of the stones. Not much details to this, so I'm just gonna put a few out and then leave it bare. So now I'm just gonna leave it like that, so not much details to the waves. And next I'm gonna make the tiny stones corals just with dark gray. So use a freestyle shape. There we go, and I'm just gonna add a little brown and then mix it with the green and outline the shape of the waves. And then mix it again with the damp brush. The waves, we're gonna do the waves with white gouache later on. Just gonna add more details to the water. let this dry for a while again. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and continue to paint the stones, which is a mix of wet and just detailing later on when it's dry. So we're just gonna mix color, mix it the same color as the sand, and just cover the whole thing first. This might not be that as neat as the original one, since I didn't use a masking fluid for this one, but I'm just gonna improvise and just go with it. So let's just cover all of the stones first. While this is still wet, and mix this for giving it volume. Dry and continue with the detailing and the waves after this. now the last step to this is to use. I'm gonna use white gouache to make the waves. I'm just gonna wet this first. Make the outline of the waves before we fill it in. Might be different than the original one, since the original one is pure paper white, since I use a masking fluid to cover it, so don't worry too much. And the little waves around the stones. Don't forget to just dilute the gouache a bit, so make it a bit transparent, so the waves foam can look more realistic as the waves slowly form. After this, we're just gonna use a little bit brown to put details to the waves. And I think we're done here. this is it, the last painting in the last week of my calendar painting kit tutorial. I hope you enjoy it, and hopefully I'll have more tutorials coming soon. Thank you for watching.